A woman called me this spring in a bit of a state. The rooster she had raised from a day-old chick, the one her grandkids had named and carried around the yard all summer, had turned on her 7-year-old and left a nasty gash on his leg, 4 stitches, a tetanus shot, and a very frightened kid who will not go near the coop alone now. She had bought that chick from the feed store bin, marked simply Rhode Island Red straight run, $2.50 each. No warning of any kind about temperament, no conversation about what a mature rooster of that particular line can turn into by 6 months old. She had picked it because it was the cheapest bin in the row, and the lady at the counter said Reds were a good all-purpose beginner bird. Nobody mentioned the roosters. I have kept birds my whole life. On this same patch of ground my own family has worked for generations, and I want to walk you carefully through 7 breeds. I watch feed stores push hardest on beginners every single spring, not because the breeds themselves are bad birds. Some of them are excellent birds in the right hands. The trouble is, the bin they're sitting in tells you almost nothing about whether that particular bird is right for your particular setup, your climate, or your family. Here is the thing nobody explains at the counter. A feed store orders chicks from a hatchery months in advance, based on what sells fastest and costs the least to produce in bulk. That decision gets made at a warehouse somewhere based on hatchery supply and margin long before your family ever walks in the door. It has nothing to do with whether a particular breed fits your climate, your space, your patience for a broody hen sitting on nothing for weeks at a stretch, or your tolerance for a rooster that might turn territorial the day your grandkids start visiting again. Cute sells fastest, so cute gets the front bin. Cheap sells fastest, so whatever the hatchery has, plenty of that season gets marked down. Staff turnover at most feed stores is high, and the person behind the counter in March is very often somebody who started 3 weeks ago and has never actually kept a flock themselves. Most of what looks like a run of bad luck with a particular bird later on started as a mismatch between the bird and the buyer that a 5-minute honest conversation at the counter would have caught, if anyone there had the knowledge or the time to have it. Number 1. Rhode Island Red, particularly hatchery lines sold straight run. This is the classic all-purpose starter bird, hardy, a strong layer, and genuinely one of the best breeds going for an experienced keeper who wants production and knows what they are getting into. The trouble is the roosters. Hatchery breeding for fast growth and heavy laying in the hens has in a lot of production lines come loose from any real effort to breed calm temperament in the males. A straight run bin gives you no way to sort hens from roosters at 2 days old, so you are buying a coin flip on top of everything else. About 1 in 4 straight run cockerels I have seen come through new keepers around here turns genuinely territorial by 5 or 6 months, squaring up rather than backing off, flogging with his spurs at ankle height where a small child stands right in range. That is not a small injury. It is stitches, sometimes a tetanus shot, and a very frightened kid who stops wanting to help with the birds at all. The fix costs almost nothing in dollars and everything in timing. If you want this breed, buy sexed pullets only and pay the few extra dollars a bird that sexing costs. If a young rooster you already have starts squaring up rather than backing off, plan on rehoming him well before autumn, rather than hoping a few more weeks settles him down, because in my experience that particular temperament rarely does. Number 2, Silkies. Feed stores love putting these in the brooder display because nothing sells faster to a family with young kids than a fluffy bird that looks like a stuffed toy come to life. What nobody mentions at the counter is that a Silkie is one of the poorest layers in the whole hobby. producing maybe 3 eggs a week on a good week, and going broody for weeks at a stretch, sitting on nothing at all and shutting egg production down completely while she does it. Her heavy, feathered crest sits right over her eyes, which cuts her field of vision badly and leaves her noticeably slower than the rest of the flock to spot a hawk's shadow crossing the yard or a fox working the fence line at dusk. Add in a small, light body that handles a hard frost worse than the sturdier breeds standing next to her in the run, and you have a bird that costs considerably more in predator proofing and winter shelter than the price tag at the feed store ever lets on. A fully covered run with real hardware cloth, not chicken wire, runs a genuine cost most beginners have not budgeted for on top of the bird itself. Keep Silkies in that fully covered run. Never a bird that free ranges unsupervised, and go into the purchase expecting a gentle pet more than a working layer, because judging her by egg count alone will only leave you disappointed. Number 3, Cochins. Big, round, endlessly fluffy, and about as calm looking as a chicken gets, which is exactly why feed stores set them out front where every passing family can see them. That heavy feathering hides body condition completely, so a new keeper very often overfeeds a Cochin for months without ever noticing the weight going on underneath all that fluff, since there is nothing visible to warn them. The extra weight brings a real risk of bumblefoot, a painful swelling on the footpad from repeated pressure on hard or wet ground, and left unaddressed it can mean a genuine vet visit and weeks of care. Despite the size of the bird, a Cochin lays only about 2 to 3 eggs a week even in her best season, far fewer than the size suggests to somebody buying purely on looks. The heavily feathered feet also trap mud and manure through a wet winter, raising frostbite risk on toes that never fully dry out between one damp day and the next. Measure feed by weight rather than leaving it out free choice all day, and check under the fluff on the belly and feet every single week rather than trusting appearances, because with this breed, appearances are exactly what get beginners into trouble. Number 4, Leghorns, the classic white egg machine, and genuinely an excellent layer, close to an egg a day through her prime years, but a poor match for most first-time setups. Leghorns are flighty, quick to startle at a slamming door or a dog barking 2 yards over, and loud about it, with an alarm call that carries clean across a whole neighbourhood the moment anything moves near the run. They can clear a 4-foot fence without much effort at all, so anything under 6 feet is really just a polite suggestion to this breed rather than an actual boundary, and more than one new keeper has spent a whole weekend chasing a Leghorn out of the neighbour's vegetable patch. They do not tolerate close confinement well and get visibly stressed and noisy in a small run, pacing the fence line rather than settling. They are not the calm lapbird of family pictures when they picture keeping a few hens for the kids to hold. If egg count alone is genuinely your priority, and you have the height of fencing and the space for it, Leghorns are hard to beat on production. If what you actually wanted was a friendly flock the grandkids can pick up and cuddle, this is the wrong bin entirely, no matter how good the egg count looks on paper. Number 5, Polish, and any of the other heavily crested breeds sold alongside them. That striking crown of feathers is the whole appeal at the feed store, sitting right up top of the display because it draws every eye in the store. And it's also the source of most of this breed's real problems. The crest sits directly over the eyes and genuinely limits how much a Polish hen can see coming from any direction. That makes her both slower to spot a hawk overhead or a dog at the fence, and more likely to get bullied by flockmates further up the pecking order who can plainly see her hesitate and take advantage of it. New keepers often do not realise the crest needs a regular trim to keep it out of her eyes entirely, and skipping that trim is not a cosmetic oversight, it is a genuine welfare problem for the bird. A wet, matted crest in winter holds cold moisture right against the skull, and that is a discomfort this breed carries through the coldest months of the year without complaint, which is exactly why it goes unnoticed. If you keep Polish, trim the crest feathers back from the eyes every few weeks with a small pair of scissors, and watch the pecking order closely for the first few months after introducing them, since this is consistently one of the breeds most likely to end up on the losing end of flock politics. Number 6. Jersey Giants. Sold on novelty as the biggest chicken you can keep, and that size is entirely real, but so is everything it costs to get there. A Jersey Giant does not reach laying age until around 7 to 8 months old, against roughly 5 months for most standard breeds, which means feeding a bird that size for 2 or 3 extra months with nothing at all coming back in eggs during that stretch. The feed bill over those extra months runs noticeably higher than a beginner ever budgets for, since a bird that large eating that much for that long adds up fast, month after month, with an empty nesting box to show for it. Standard roost bars and coop framing built with a 5-pound hen in mind are not always sturdy enough for a mature rooster pushing 13 pounds or more, and a roost bar that sags or cracks under that weight is a repair bill. Most new keepers did not see coming when they bought the bird. If you want this breed for the genuine novelty of it, and you have the feed budget and reinforced housing to match, go in with your eyes fully open about the timeline involved. If what you were actually sold on was fast egg production, this is the slowest possible path to a full nesting box in the whole hobby. Number 7. Unlabelled bargain bin mixes sold as a specific breed with no real verification behind the label at all. Every spring feed stores get a batch of chicks. A hatchery is labelled loosely, something like an Easter egg mix or a rare breed assortment, and it gets sold at a lower price than the clearly named breeds sitting right next to it in the same brooder. The trouble is the label on that particular bin is very often a guess rather than a guarantee, written by whoever unpacked the delivery that morning, working from a hatchery invoice that itself may not be precise. A new keeper who specifically wanted an all-female laying flock can end up with unexpected roosters mixed in, sometimes more than one, sometimes in a town with a genuine ordnance limit on how many roosters a single property is allowed to keep at all. Sorting that out later costs real time and real money. Rehoming birds you have already grown attached to, adjusting coop space you had carefully planned around a smaller all-hen flock, occasionally dealing with a neighbour complaint over crowing you never saw coming when you brought home a box of what you were told were pullets. If a bin is not clearly and specifically labelled with an actual named breed, ask directly where those particular chicks came from and whether they have been sexed by someone trained to do it. If the answer you get back is vague or evasive, that vagueness is itself your answer, and it's worth walking away from that bin entirely. Now, a few things worth doing before you ever walk into a feed store again. Write down what you actually want before you go. Eggs, meat, a calm flock for the grandkids, or some mix of all three, because the right breed changes completely depending on the honest answer, and a cute bin at the counter will talk you out of that answer every single time if you let it. Bring that list with you and check every bin against it rather than trusting memory once you are standing in front of a box of chicks. Ask the counter staff directly whether a bird is sexed or straight run, and if they cannot answer with any real certainty, assume straight run and plan your rooster strategy before you ever bring the chick home, rather than after a temperament problem has already shown up in your run. A quick, honest conversation at the counter costs you nothing and saves months of guessing. Research the mature size and mature temperament of any breed before you fall for the fluffy chick stage, since every single chick in that brooder looks calm and easy, regardless of what it grows into by autumn. A photo search of the adult bird and 10 minutes reading what other keepers say about the breed's actual temperament tells you far more than the sign on the bin ever will. Match the breed to your actual climate rather than the one printed on the sign. A bird bred for a mild coast does not always carry a hard winter well, and a heavy, cold-hardy breed can struggle just as badly through a genuinely hot, humid summer, panting in the shade while a lighter breed nearby carries on completely unbothered. Think honestly about what a mismatch actually costs over a full year, not just the price of the chick itself. Extra fencing for a flighty breed, a covered run for a poor flyer, a reinforced roost for a heavy breed, or the cost and time of rehoming a rooster that never should have come home with you in the first place. All of that adds up to far more than the $2 or $3 you saved buying whichever bin happened to be cheapest that particular morning. If you already have birds and you're adding a new breed to the flock, treat that introduction the same careful way you would treat any new bird coming onto the property. 30 days of separate housing first, then a slow supervised introduction where the two groups can see each other before they ever share the same ground. Because a mismatched breed introduced badly on top of a mismatched breed to begin with is asking for real trouble twice over. I've put together a proper written guide that walks through choosing a breed for your exact setup, climate and goals, along with a full first-year care calendar and a simple checklist for exactly what to ask at the feed store counter before you ever hand over a card. It's linked below, and it exists because I have watched too many good-hearted new keepers fall for a bin of fluffy chicks in March and spend the rest of the year working around a mismatch that a 5-minute conversation could have avoided entirely. If you take one thing from today, take this. Before your next trip to the feed store, write your actual goal on a scrap of paper and put it in your pocket. Eggs, meat, a calm flock for the grandkids, whatever it genuinely is. Read it before you look at a single bin and let it decide the breed instead of letting the cutest chick in the brooder decide it for you.